You think magnetism is simple. Two objects, invisible force, push and pull. But that's not what's really happening. Because right now, at this exact moment, your hand is being held away from this screen by the same force that makes magnets snap together. Not gravity, not energy, not some mysterious field. The same rule that decides why matter doesn't collapse into itself. And once you see it, magnetism stops being a trick and starts looking like the operating system of reality itself. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand magnets. You'll understand why you can't pass through the world. When most people think about magnetism, they imagine something special, something separate from the rest of physics, a strange invisible power that only magnets have. But the truth is far more unsettling. Magnetism is not a thing. It is a consequence, a shadow cast by something deeper that controls nearly everything you touch, see, and feel. And look at your hand resting in front of you. It feels solid. It feels real. But in reality, almost all of it is empty space. The atoms in your skin are tiny islands surrounded by vast gaps. The same is true for the atoms in the screen you're watching. If matter is mostly nothing, then why don't your hand and the screen pass straight through each other? The answer is the same reason magnets repel. At the heart of every atom are charged particles. Electrons don't just sit still. They move, they spin, and they create tiny magnetic effects of their own. When billions of these line up inside certain materials, you get what we call a magnet. But even when they don't line up, their presence still shapes how matter behaves. When your hand approaches the screen, the electrons in your hand and the electrons in the screen begin to interact. They don't want to occupy the same quantum states. They push back. Not with a shove you can see, but with a force written into the rules of nature itself. What you feel as solidity is actually a massive, coordinated act of electromagnetic resistance. This is where magnetism stops being a curiosity and starts becoming a clue. Because the same force that makes two magnets snap together is the same force that keeps atoms from collapsing, keeps chemistry possible, and keeps the world from turning into a cloud of particles. Magnetism is not separate from electricity, and electricity is not separate from light. They are all faces of a single structure called the electromagnetic field. You don't live in a world of solid objects. You live inside a web of invisible rules, constantly negotiating where matter is allowed to be. And magnetism is one of the few places where that hidden structure becomes visible. But here's the deeper problem. If this force is so fundamental, so woven into everything, then asking why magnetism works might be the wrong question entirely. Because what if this isn't something that can be explained using simpler ideas? What if this is one of the ideas everything else is built on? At this point, most explanations of magnetism try to comfort you. They bring in diagrams, arrows, and neat little stories about fields flowing through space like invisible rivers. And for a while, that works. You can picture it. You can repeat it. You can feel like you understand it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those pictures are not explanations. They are translations. When physicists talk about fields, they are not pointing to something you can touch or see. They are pointing to a set of mathematical rules that predict what will happen if you put a particle here instead of there. The field is not a substance. It is a map of how the universe responds. So when you ask, why do magnets repel? What you are really asking is, why does the universe follow this map instead of another one? And that is where the trail begins to fade, because every deeper answer eventually turns into a statement of how, not why. We can tell you how electrons behave in a magnetic field. We can tell you how moving charges create magnetism. We can tell you how changing magnetic fields create electric currents. But at the bottom of all those explanations is a rule that simply is. This is where many people feel a kind of quiet frustration. They expect physics to deliver a final story, a simple, familiar picture that makes everything feel obvious. But the universe doesn't seem interested in being obvious. Take the idea of force. In everyday life, a force is a push or a pull. Someone shoves you, you feel it. But in physics, a force is a number in an equation that tells you how motion will change over time. The feeling comes later, inside your nerves and your brain. The reality is abstract, long before it becomes personal. Magnetism lives in that abstract layer. It doesn't reach out and grab things. It doesn't decide to attract or repel. It follows a pattern written into the structure of space itself. And that pattern shows up the same way, whether you are talking about a compass needle, a power station, or the atoms in your own body. This is why the question, why does magnetism exist, is so dangerous. Because if you keep pushing it, you eventually run out of smaller pieces to point at. You hit something that doesn't seem to be made of anything else, a rule that doesn't explain itself, and that moment is where physics quietly changes into philosophy. Not because scientists give up, but because they realize they have reached the foundation. The place where the universe stops telling stories and starts stating facts. Magnetism, in the end, is not a mystery waiting to be solved. It is a window into the kind of universe you are living in. Now we take a step that feels small, but changes everything. Up to this point, magnetism and electricity seem like different characters in the same story. One makes needles turn and metals cling. The other makes lights glow and screens come alive. In everyday life, they live in separate boxes in your mind, but the universe doesn't keep them separate. In the 19th century, physicists discovered something unsettling. When an electric field changes, it creates a magnetic field. And when a magnetic field changes, it creates an electric field. They don't just interact, they generate each other. This means electricity and magnetism are not two forces. They are two faces of one deeper thing. Picture a ripple moving across a lake. The water itself doesn't travel from one end to the other. What travels is the pattern. A rise here, a fall there, moving forward as a relationship, not as a substance. That's the closest everyday image we have for what's happening in space. When electric and magnetic fields chase each other through the universe, they form a self-sustaining wave. And that wave is light, not just the glow from a bulb or the shine of the sun. Every radio signal, every Wi-Fi connection, every X-ray in a hospital, every gamma ray from a distant galaxy. They are all the same phenomenon, stretched or squeezed to different sizes. Suddenly, magnetism is no longer about fridge doors and compasses. It is about vision. Because the only reason you can see anything at all is that this electric-magnetic dance is constantly washing over your eyes. Your brain builds reality from ripples in invisible fields. But here's where it gets even stranger. This wave doesn't need a medium. Sound needs air. Ocean waves need water. But light doesn't ride on anything. It moves through empty space as if space itself is the thing that can vibrate, which leads to a deeper question. If space can ripple, what is space actually made of? And this is where the old idea of a simple, solid universe starts to fall apart. Space is not just a stage where physics happens. It is part of the system. It has properties. It can stretch, bend, and carry these waves across billions of years. Magnetism, electricity, and light become threads in the same fabric. The compass needle in your hand and the glow of a star across the galaxy are connected by the same underlying rules. One is just happening on your desk. The other is happening on a cosmic scale. This is the moment when many people realize something quietly unsettling. You are not living in a world of solid objects. You are living in a world of fields, patterns, and relationships that your senses translate into the feeling of things. And once you see that, the question is no longer how magnetism works. The question becomes what, exactly, is reality made of? At this point, magnetism and light have already dissolved the idea that the universe is made of simple, separate pieces. But now we step into a deeper layer, where even time itself stops behaving the way you expect. Imagine you are standing still, holding a magnet in your hand. The fields around it feel calm, stable, invisible. Nothing dramatic seems to be happening. But the moment you start moving, something strange appears. From your perspective, the magnet is just a magnet. From the perspective of someone watching you move, the situation changes. They don't just see a magnetic field, they see an electric field appear as well. This is not a trick of measurement, it's a feature of reality. Motion mixes electricity and magnetism together. What looks like pure magnetism in one frame of reference becomes a blend of electric and magnetic forces in another. This is the first hint that the universe does not agree on what is electric and what is magnetic. It depends on how you are moving. And if that's true, then motion itself is not just something happening inside the universe. Motion is something the universe cares about. This is where light enters as the referee. No matter how fast you move, no matter who is watching, everyone measures the same speed for light. It does not add with your motion. It does not subtract. It stays fixed. This single fact forces everything else to rearrange. If speed can't change, then something else has to. So space and time take the hit. Clocks tick differently when they move. Lengths shrink in the direction of motion. Events that look simultaneous to you may not be simultaneous to someone else. The universe stops offering a single shared now. Instead, every observer carries their own version of time. And all of this traces back to the same hidden rule you've already met. The electric and magnetic fields that create light also define how fast information can travel. They don't just tell you what light is, they tell you how reality is allowed to change. This means the limit on speed is not a technological problem. It is a structural feature of the universe. You can build better engines, you can find more energy, you can imagine more powerful machines. But you cannot cross this boundary because it is woven into the way space and time are stitched together. At this stage, magnetism is no longer about attraction and repulsion. It is about the architecture of the cosmos. The same fields that twist a compass needle also enforce the rule that past, present, and future cannot be rearranged at will. They draw the lines that even time itself cannot step outside. This is the moment where many people feel the shift. You are not just moving through space. You're moving through a structure that decides what motion, causality, and even before and after are allowed to mean. And once you see that, the universe stops feeling like a place. It starts feeling like a system with rules written deeper than matter itself. So far, the universe has followed its rules with quiet discipline. Light sets the limit. Fields shape motion. Time bends, but it never snaps. But there are places where these rules are pushed so hard that they begin to blur. Imagine falling toward a black hole. From far away, someone watching you never sees you cross the edge. You slow down. You fade. You seem to freeze in time. But from your own perspective, nothing special happens. You keep falling. You pass the boundary. The universe does not agree on what you experience. This is not just a strange illusion. It is a clash between two deep ideas about reality. One comes from gravity, which says space and time are curved by mass and energy. The other comes from fields and light, which say there is a strict limit to how fast information can move. Near a black hole, these ideas collide. The gravity becomes so intense that space itself is dragged inward. Light, which defines the fastest possible motion, is no longer fast enough to escape. The rule that once organized the universe now draws a horizon around a region where the future points only one way. Inside, every path leads deeper. This is where the question changes. It is no longer what happens next. It becomes, does next even mean anything here? The same problem appears when you rewind the universe to its beginning. As you go back in time, everything gets hotter, denser, and closer together. Fields grow stronger, space shrinks, time compresses. Eventually, the equations stop making sense. They point to a moment where the rules themselves break. A singularity. Not just a place where something extreme happens, a place where the ideas of before and after stop being well defined. This tells you something unsettling. The laws you've been following are not the final layer. They work beautifully across stars, atoms, and galaxies. They explain magnets, light, and motion with stunning precision. But at the edges of black holes and the birth of the universe, they reach a boundary. Beyond it, there must be something deeper. This is where physics stops giving answers and starts pointing. It points toward a hidden structure that unites gravity, fields, space, and time into a single framework. A theory that does not just describe what happens inside the universe, but explains why the universe has these rules at all. And here is the strange twist. Everything you have learned so far, from a compass needle turning in your hand to the light from distant stars bending around galaxies, is part of that same unfinished story. The small and the cosmic are not separate chapters. They are pages from the same book, written in different scales. The magnet on your desk and the edge of a black hole are both signatures of the same underlying code. You are not just living in a universe. You are standing inside a question that the universe is still trying to answer. By now, you can feel the pattern. Light is not just something that travels. Fields are not just invisible forces. Time is not just a ticking clock. They are parts of a deeper system that shapes what reality is allowed to be. But here is the final turn. The universe does not run on objects. It runs on relationships. A particle only has meaning because of how it interacts with fields. Motion only exists because of how time and space compare one moment to the next. Even now only exists because of how your brain stitches together signals arriving at different speeds. Nothing stands alone. When you touch a table, your hand does not meet solid matter. It meets a balance point, a standoff between electromagnetic fields that refuse to overlap. The feeling of solidity is a negotiation, not a collision. The same is true on the largest scale. Galaxies do not move through empty space. They move through a fabric that can stretch, twist, and carry ripples across billions of years. What you see in the night sky is not a snapshot of where things are. It is a history of how they were. This means something profound. Reality is not a collection of things frozen in place. It is a web of events, constantly updating, always in motion. And you are not outside that web, observing it from a safe distance. You are part of it. Every thought you have is a physical process. Every memory is a pattern in matter and energy. Every decision is a tiny shift in the state of the universe, carried forward by the same rules that guide stars and light. The line between observer and observed is not as sharp as it feels. This is why the deepest questions in physics start to sound like philosophy. Not because the science becomes weak, but because the ideas become so fundamental that they touch what it means to exist at all. When you ask, why does the universe have these rules? You are really asking, why can I be here to ask anything in the first place? And here is the quiet answer physics offers. The universe is not built for you, but you are built by it. Your senses, your intuition, even your sense of time are shaped by the same limits that govern light, fields, and motion. You understand the universe the way it allows you to, not completely, but enough to glimpse the structure beneath the surface. So the next time you feel something solid, watch something move, or look up at the stars, remember what is really happening. You are not seeing reality as it is. You are participating in a process that never stops unfolding. And the fact that you can notice it at all may be the most remarkable thing the universe has ever produced.